What's up, everybody? Dead Girl here. Thank you guys for tuning in to our special show this Monday. Joining me today, we have a very, very special guest. We have Mr. Sam Sharon with us. He is a British dark artist based out there in Los Angeles, California. He specializes in horror and science fiction type art. You may have seen some of his work in Fangoria, some cryptozoology type books, as well as some album covers. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me. How you doing?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm really good. Had a bit of a late night last night watching I Saw the Devil, Korean horror movie.
Oh.
Yeah, I slept quite late today, but I'm good. I'm awake now.
Is
Now
that
that
on?
it's nearly 5 o'clock.
I was gonna say it's kind of late there for you guys, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Now you, first of all, I love your work. Let's just get that out of the way real quick while I fangirl real quick over you. It's absolutely amazing, and just I don't have the correct words, but
Thanks.
you were born in Liverpool, England. So I have to ask. This is kind of like a two-parter. So first of all, is there anything over there that's akin to like our Halloween here that you guys would celebrate there?
Um, well, how do you say this? Halloween has its origins in Ireland, in the British Isles. Um, and of course it's evolved over the years, over the many, many years, from a pagan festival into the commercial nightmare that it is in America today, where
Yes.
people dress up as anything. You know, in America, it seems like it's an excuse to just have a fancy dress party, and that kind of misses the point of Halloween. The die-hard horror fans like yourself obviously get it,
Right.
and you understand what it's about, and it's supposed to be a scary horror themed celebration,
Yes.
commercially, that is, anyway. And in England we do have that, but not on the scale of America.
Okay.
um, you guys seem to do everything 10 times bigger. You know, your meal portions, everything's just bigger. um,
Yeah, it gets to
but yeah, we
be.
do have Halloween in a sense.
Okay.
Pumpkins and all of that, it's there.
Do you guys have like the trick or treating and stuff like we do, where the
We
kids go
did,
door to
yeah.
door?
I mean, I did as a kid, and times change, and it's not as safe anymore, and people are a little bit more, what's the word, protective and cautious about everything, because people, the more that's exposed and more people talk and online, and the information that's being passed around now, people are being more aware of more dangers than there ever were, and all of this kind of thing. So
Yes.
trick or treating doesn't seem to be that much of a family tradition anymore. It's very, people, neighbors don't even talk to each other anymore. It's just a different
Yeah.
age, isn't it? So
It's
it's different now. So
yes.
I'm sure it goes on somewhere. There might be little local events and things, but yeah, I did that as a kid, but I don't really see it anymore,
And it
which
used
is
to
sad.
it used to be a real big thing when I was growing up, and I mean our neighborhood still does it on a fairly large scale, I think. But to your point is, I think a lot of that has been lost in translation because now you get My Little Ponies and all kinds of glittery things when that's not really what it's about. But
Yeah.
so you grew up over in England. When did you make the move to come over here to the States?
Um, it would have been around, well, it was 2007 I first came out to Los Angeles. And I never looked back really. It was a sort of, there was so many more opportunities and things to do, and it seemed as though this was the real world. In England, it's a large country, but there's such a limitation on what you can do in terms of the field of interest of horror or anything creative. It's
Okay.
lots of dogs fighting over the same piece of meat. So it's very difficult to sort of, a lot of people hold their cards very close. Nobody shares.
Okay.
It's a very tough industry over there because there's so few opportunities and placements really for anyone to get a job, whether it's doing creature effects or conceptual design or anything. Um, but coming to America, it just seems that everybody's, giving away their business cards and, call
Yes.
me and let's have a coffee, and everything seems to be a team effort, and things seem to get done way more over in the States,
Okay.
in terms of well, I mean, it's Hollywood, isn't it?
Yes.
This is the place to be. And I say Hollywood, I mean generally the whole of the United States. You know, it's
Okay.
the US is seen as Hollywood.
Oh, okay.
To the rest of Europe, you know, maybe not certain places, but you know, we know where they are.
Now, when you say you first came over, did you come over first for a visit initially and then just decide, like, I need to be here? Or did you just up and move right over?
No, it was a visit. A friend of mine, Jason Charles Miller, singer-songwriter. He used to be the frontman for the band Godhead,
Okay.
the industrial band, a couple of moons ago. And he and I had been in touch on MySpace a long time ago, and I'd done some artwork for his then band Godhead. And he said, you know, if you ever want to visit LA and have somewhere to stay, just come over for a visit. So I did, and then, as you say, yeah, I just didn't look back. I thought, wow, what a great place. Met some fantastic people, and that was it. I was sold. I thought, well, I've got to move here, you know. So I got my own green card and did all that jazz, and here I am.
I didn't realize it was that. I didn't realize that people across the pond held their cards so close to their chest when it came to artwork. I guess in my mind, I'm in the realm of, I think that everyone should work together and that everyone benefits even more so if you do, because, you know, this hand can help this hand and together you can all create great things and everyone benefits from it. I didn't realize that it was that cutthroat.
No, it's I mean, again, you know, this could be entirely my own personal experience, but I've seen it so much I can absolutely accept that this is just the way it is in the UK. That it does seem to be very different now with the advent of Facebook, particularly, where people share and, you know, there is an interaction of creatives working together more so than there ever was. And I think it probably is very much different now to when I was at university in the late 90s. So then there really wasn't any way of really reaching out and getting in touch with any studios, bar cold calling them or writing them a letter, or, you know, you didn't know anybody, and how would you, and how do you find these people? Nobody was advertising saying, I work here and I do this, let's chat.
Right.
Whereas on Facebook, you know, now you do. People are sort of really showing what they do. I do it, you know, I do this, look at my stuff. And so people are more interactive these days. I think it's a lot easier. So things can change, but they probably have changed. But again, I think in the UK, it is very limited in terms of the number of seats that are allocated, in a sense, you know.
Yeah.
There are only so many jobs to go around, in which case you go further afield and, you know, you come over to America.
Or there may be a bit more, just because, as you said, Hollywood, there's a lot of filming done, especially in Los Angeles. And then here we had a lot of filming done in Georgia, which is up the road. Florida, unfortunately, we do some, but not as much as we used to. So things here are a little bit different. But I think, you know, it seems like it was the move for you to make, for sure.
I think, you know, further to that point, I think also it is, it's easier now with the internet, sort of ironically, in a sort of oxymoron kind of way. You don't have to move anywhere to do those jobs anymore. And being a freelance artist, you can work from home, as I do, and it doesn't really matter about turning up to a studio and having a design position in a big creative workshop or a studio. And so, yeah, I think the internet, the further we go down the line of social media, the easier it's become for creatives. But also, it's opened up the floodgates to a big ocean of not very good work. So it's hard to stand out in an ocean of rubbish, in a way. You know.
You're absolutely right. I've seen a lot of fantastic artists, such as yourself, and I've seen some that are okay, that still need some work, but it's tough when you get flooded.
Yeah, I think people fool themselves as well, and not to sort of, you know, poo-poo anyone's dreams, but some people dream, and it's just sad when you see them really, really trying to do something, and they don't have the right sort of mindset as to, you know, how how they can pull a team together to make a film or anything like that, and
Right.
and they end up putting out something that they think is great. Much in the sort of Ed Wood kind of way, where they just, that's how they want it to be, and that's the way it's going to be, and that's great. But unfortunately, you'll have some tremendously talented individuals who are making these films that are on a shoestring, and they pull it together, and they do these incredible films, and it never gets seen, and nobody's, even aware that they exist because of this ocean of triers who just think, oh, I might be a filmmaker, and it's not exactly easy. So it's catch-22, isn't it? Really, it's sort of it's easy to get the work out there, but then it's harder to be seen because there's so many. We could go around in circles.
Yes, there are lots, and then and to that sense too is there's all the film festivals, so that becomes inundated, and it's
Oh yeah.
again, you may find that one gem that's just absolutely beautiful and perfect amongst a sea of 50 that are just meh.
Yeah, yeah.
Not
It's tiring. I've sat through many, many Z budget movies at various horror conventions, and I just think, oh God, what am I doing here?
Is it gonna end?
Yeah, but you have to be nice and sort of. I mean, you don't have to be, but it's good to be, and it's the right way to be. Is to just sort of say, well, that was a film.
That was what it was.
Yeah, I'm going home now. Thanks.
Appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that you went to schooling, and I did read that you studied at the University of Leeds, in the College of Art and Design in Westchester, or what was it, West Yorkshire, and you've got a BA with honors, and then you were also qualified as a teacher. So, being qualified as a teacher, did you actually teach?
I did for a year, and then I just thought I'm too young to be doing this. I'll save this for later. Not to knock any young teachers out there. But it just wasn't for me,
Yeah.
I wanted to do other things before I put on some tweed and a bow tie. But yeah, I love teaching, and I really got a lot out of it, and it's a great thing to do, and it's certainly something that I'm very happy that I did, and I will go back and do that again at some point, I'm sure. But I wanted to sort of get out and see the world first, instead of being stuck in a school.
No, it's understandable and makes complete sense because, to your point, if you're sitting behind a desk throughout half the year and you get maybe a month or two off, then you don't really get to experience or see the things that you would see if as you do, you're able to work from home and you're able to travel and still get done what you need to do.
Yeah.
So no, good. That's good to know though that you'll go back to it at some point, just not tomorrow.
I'll probably I'll end up like Indiana Jones. I'll have short hair and little round glasses and a tweed sort of brown suit with a little bow tie, and occasionally I'll just sneak out for adventures.
Just run off for like a week or two and get into some shenanigans and then come back like nothing ever happened.
Yeah, I'll go and steal a golden idol from a temple, nearly get murdered by natives in some strange mystical land. Yeah, I'll do that. Sounds fun.
I mean, I think deep down we all really want to have a little Indiana Jones adventure at some point in our lives.
Of course, yeah.
Now, you've done work for different books, different magazines. You also, moons ago, I know we talked about this before we actually went live, is you had a solo exhibition called A Walk on the Dark Side. And I was reading on that and I found something interesting, which is going to kind of touch on the differences between, of course, the States and then across the pond, is that you had people protesting and boycotting the exhibit. And then they extended the exhibit even after that was happening for another, 6 weeks or something like that, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah. Excuse me, I'm drinking my tea there. It's that was a good while ago. That's nearly 20 years ago now. But it was a solo exhibition. I had 45 or so pieces of artwork in there, and there were statues that I'd constructed from various car parts and machinery and things like that. But I'd also used teddy bears as a sort of a gimmick in one part of the exhibition. But of course, all the paintings and everything else they did wasn't of interest to the press. They wanted to look at the gory teddy bears, which really was just a little bit of a quick joke. But I'd cut all their eyes out, painted them all black, and put nails in their eyes, and then had fake blood sort of pouring out, and had them nailed up on canvases and things. And they were called Teddy Bears. And that just got the attention of the press, and then it went into the national newspapers, and people were trying to boycott it, saying, this is awful. These are children's, things that people cherish. And there was some woman who had a teddy bear museum, and she said that she talked to her bears, and she was horrified. And and I thought, who's the weirdo? Is it me, or the person who talks to teddy bears? Whatever. But yeah, so it just kind of, you had people writing into the newspaper. They even set up a hotline for people to call in and say, what do you think about this show? Should it be stopped? Is it terrible? Is it in bad taste? Is it offensive? It was kind of ridiculous. And this is before MySpace. This is like,
Oh,
as
wow.
I say, 20 years ago. So it was kind of, it really stuck out because there wasn't much else around. And so it ended up on like the front page of various newspapers, and the gallery said, we're not going to boycott it. This is good for the gallery. It's bringing attention to the gallery. Obviously, it's
People are going to want to see what's so offensive that it needs to be, boycotted and have hotlines set up.
Yeah, bad news is good news. There's no such thing as bad press. And so they said, we're going to extend it for another 6 weeks, and they did. And I sold all the pieces as well, which is great.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But yeah, that went on, and then people said, oh, you're going to release some toys? Are you going to release teddy bears as an actual toy product? And I, I copyrighted it and had, the intentions of doing that. And then I just sort of sat by and put that on the shelf for a bit, because I thought, I've got better things to do. And then all of a sudden, all these creepy toys started hitting the market, the Living Dead dolls and, Scare Bears and all these other things. And I thought, well, I guess I'll leave it to them then.
In your back of your head, you're like, and you're welcome.
Yeah, well, a lot of people have the same ideas at the same time, don't they? But it was it's very interesting that it was the same time.
Very coincidental.
Yeah, a little bit.
Now, did that attention from the press, as far as like, from the media and of course from the people that would come out and that wanted to see the exhibits, did that more or less kind of add fuel to your creative side there in order to continue on with the darker things and the images that may not be family friendly?
I think more than anything, I wanted to sort of push the boundaries for myself, and I've always, even before that, the whole point of me having that exhibition really was to just make some money, in all honesty, to sort of make some money and see if I could harbor a craft that I could continue with the rest of my life, doing my own artwork that I liked, and actually have a lifestyle built on something where it would pay my bills,
Yeah.
and I could live as an artist. It's anyone's dream, isn't it? Any starving artist's dream is to just get by on their own work and the merit of their own skills and what they want to do. And it's always been said, isn't it, that if you enjoy your work, it's not work.
No.
I mean, that was the initial aim, and I've just sort of continued from that point. I've done every other job under the sun. Let's be honest. I've gone and done the school and the whole in university thing and everything else, but I've never been afraid of getting my hands dirty and doing an actual real job. I've worked in offices. I've worked at Blockbuster. I've been a video clerk. I've been at the cinema, restaurants, cafes. I've done all of that work. I was an office cleaner at one point, So having a day job is essential to fuel your sort of dreams and your passions of what you really do and your real self, rather than the other way around. A lot of people look at it as a sort of, it's a sideline hobby. I look at it as completely the other way around. The day job is the hobby. That's the bit that makes, everything else tick, while you can do the real work, which is your actual art passion.
Yes.
And so, I think, when the press got involved with the exhibition, it did fuel me a bit, because it proved that there was something there. And it wasn't about attention, and it wasn't about annoying anyone or offending anyone. It was purely to see that there are other people interested in this. And it's nice to sort of see this 20 years later, where I'm talking to you on your podcast, where your whole ethos is horror. And there is, this whole community out here now where we can all share in these interesting, strange things. Because at the time, it was literally being like a member of the Addams family. You were the weird one, and now it's as though
You're the
it's not
normal
weird.
one.
Yeah, it's not weird anymore. If anything's weird, I don't have any tattoos. I'm now the odd one out, where it seems all my friends have tattoos and that kind of thing, or they've cut their hair and I haven't. So times change, and it's interesting to see it all evolve into now, where you can continue with the art and the movies and the music, and nothing's changed, but everything's changed. The more things change, everything stays the same.
Absolutely. Now, I wanted to show off some of the pieces that you had sent me that we could share with some folks hanging out. And these are your Baphomet pieces. And I know we talked about this a little bit ago, that you got in some trouble for some things here on they're on Facebook, because Facebook likes to police things. But yeah, what happened?
Well, the image on the left, the Baphomet portrait, if you will, that was my rendition of the Eliphas Levi traditional Baphomet image, and I tried to keep it as loyal and as similar to the original illustration, but do my sort of realistic oil painting version style, almost Renaissance classic, all fully fleshed out color version of a Baphomet. And I, as I do with everything, it was posted on Instagram and Facebook, and I have prints of it, and I put it out there. And then it was taken down by Facebook. Someone had reported it, or one of their bots had reported it, because it has bare breasts. And of course, you can go into any museum or gallery anywhere in the world, pretty much, and you can see thousands of boobs and nipples and everything else on full display in all their glory in marble and paintings and things like that. And for some reason on Facebook, because it's connected to cultures that find nudity offensive, and I understand that, it was taken down. But I appealed it, because there's a little sort of tick box on Facebook where they say, if you think this is wrong, you can sort of tell us why, and I did. And I pointed out that, number one, it's a fictional character. It's not even a real person. It's,
Clearly.
Come on now. Yeah. It has wings and hooves, and yeah. And secondly, it's artwork. It's not real. It's not pornographic. It's nothing like that. It's simply a bare-chested chimera type being that's not even real. And they agreed, and it was reposted, which I thought was rare, but brilliant that they actually did put it back up.
Well, I for one am glad that they did, because that was one of the initial pieces that I saw that you had done, that my husband had shown me, amongst some other pieces that you did, and I thought it was absolutely, it's beautiful. It's such a beautiful piece, and it was I'm so happy that you were able to repeal it, and that they were able to go ahead and put that back up for you. I think that that's phenomenal. You've got the other image on the right that is similar yet very different. So why such the difference in the two images? Like for that image there on the right, it's focusing mainly on the head, and of course it has the hands in the two positions. For this one, why didn't you do a full body like you had with the other image?
I think, well, the biomechanical version there that you're referring to, the white goat.
Yes.
I'd done the original traditional version, and then in the back of my mind for years, I've always had this sort of phrase of instead of Baphomet, to have Baphomet, and it was always a sort of an idea of doing another version of it, but in an entirely sort of cyberpunk industrial style, biomechanical imagery. And then the more I toyed with it, I thought, well, if I do it exactly the same in size and shape and layout, then it could be a sort of a partner image, but it's just not going to be as different enough for people to really notice or care. And I thought it was far more interesting to take it on a part of almost like a post-apocalyptic world where maybe people would still be worshipping this old deity kind of setup, and this is their best effort of representing that. So it was my sort of rendition of what would people build to recreate a Baphomet? What do they have lying around? You know, some hands and a goat head, some electronical pieces. That'll do. That's really where that came from. It was just sort of a quick concept that I had to sort of just get out of my head.
I love it. I think it's beautiful. I love the detail in it. I love the glowing eye is probably my favorite my favorite thing in that piece. Just because that stands out in your eye when you're looking at it, immediately is drawn to that point. Was that intended?
No.
Okay.
No. It's funny how, you know, most things in the artwork, with anything that I put out, and I'm sure it's the same for anyone, whether it's music, you know, you have an idea in your head of what it's going to be, what it's going to look like, or what it's going to sound like, even filmmaking, I'm sure. And it never, ever comes out exactly how you had it in your head. Quite often it's better, and you'll you know, be really pleased with the result, and you look at yourself and you think, oh wow, that turned out far better than I imagined it would. But there's always that thing in the back of your mind where you think, yeah, but it's not exactly what I had in my mind. So it can be frustrating, which I think also fuels you to just keep doing more and more. But then it depends on your attention span, doesn't it? And do you want to keep sort of beating a dead horse or move on?
Okay. Well, thank you. Now I know you mentioned before that you the Baphomet was an oil painting, which actually I was going to ask you is, what's your preferred medium to work in? Do you prefer digital art as opposed to, I guess, what now would be considered the old school method with, you know, pencil and paper?
Yeah. Well, that's actually not oil.
Okay.
It's that was actually a digital painting.
Okay.
But I wanted it to look like an oil painting. So yeah, thanks for that. No, it's most of my work is digital for speed more than anything else.
Okay.
But then again, it depends on how long I want to spend on a piece. I do love ink and pencil. There's something great about getting your fingers dirty, and I'll draw every week live, and I like getting my fingers black, and then you smudge the paper, and it feels like you really put in your own sweat. Quite often you are into a piece of paper to make a mark and make an image that's literally come from you. Digital art's great, and it has its place, and it does the job. But there's something about the traditional stuff, so I really couldn't say what my favorite is. It's all down to what works at the time, I suppose.
Okay. Well, it makes sense, But to your point, of course, digital is always going to be a little quicker to some regards.
Yeah.
So I can definitely understand that. Now, you've done some really, really, I don't want to say fun, but they are fun. To me, they're fun. I love the cover art that you've done for some of the books on cryptids. Like Mothman and Bigfoot. In fact, I'm going to pop some of these up just to kind of show the folks at home what you've got. Now, these, obviously, Mothman and Bigfoot have various, various looks to them, depending on the different folklore and the different region. So I did want to know, where did the inspiration come from as far as, like, your Bigfoot here and your Mothman here?
Well, it's different for any cryptid or unknown animal or undiscovered creature, really, depending on how they look, because there's so many different witness reports and eyewitness descriptions and that kind of thing. It's really hard to sort of say, well, that's what Bigfoot looks like, or that's what Mothman looks like, because it's different every time. It's particularly with the Mothman. I've previously illustrated it as a giant black owl because people have described it in such a way that if you say it's a giant black owl, that's probably what it would look like. If you didn't say that, then it could be this fantastical large monster. And so you just sort of mix the two and you have this fantastically large, monstrous black owl. And it's the same with Bigfoot. People will say he's more human looking, or it literally looked like a Native American, but giant and covered in hair. And other people will say it looked more African. It had a broad nose and a very, flat, kind looking face. And it's a very gentle giant. And you just think, well, which is it? And other people say it's very ape-like and it looks like a chimpanzee, and it's completely different again. So it's hard to sort of say with all the different descriptions, you know, how you're going to do it. It's different every time. It really is.
Do you have a preference to it? Do you prefer that gentle man type figure, or would you prefer it being more of an ape figure?
I honestly put them in the same category,
Okay.
particularly, well, we talk about Bigfoot, as just another type of people. So you're going to have angry ones, you're going to have nice ones. But if you look at it more of an animal, um, again, you know, you're going to have everything that has a life has a bad day, doesn't it? I'm sure plants
Yes.
have moods as well. But yeah, so it's, you know, it's, I'm sure you've seen, you would call it Harry and the Hendersons, but we have
Yes.
Bigfoot and the Hendersons in the UK. The movie where the artist in the film is hired to sort of do this illustration of this sort of wanted poster almost of Bigfoot,
Yeah.
and he tries to draw it as like a scary thing, but he knows that it's a kind, gentle giant, and so he just can't bring himself to draw it as a scary monster. It's a really sad point in the film. Um, but at the same time, I'm sure there are some very violent, angry, and annoyed, pissed off Bigfoot out there.
Yes.
Who knows? I don't know. I think it comes down to if I'm going to illustrate something based on a particular account or an occasion, um, it will be portrayed in how it was felt or seen at that time, you know?
Yeah.
So if it was helping someone who'd broken their leg in the mountains and there was no way that they were going to be, you know, making it home, and they just decided, okay, well, I'm going to die here in the cold, and then they get woken up because they feel like they're being carried, and they look up and they are being carried by a Bigfoot that then puts them by the side of the road, and then they're left for a trucker to come along and save them, and they do, and then they have this crazy story that they were saved by a Bigfoot. You think, well, what would that Bigfoot look like? Would it be this ferocious, scary monster? Probably not. Um, as scary as that would be anyway, you know.
Yes.
It really depends on the situation, you know.
Okay. That's very fair. I will agree, because I mean I get monstrous when I get angry, so I could see how you know it's and it also is in the eye of the beholder too, and someone that's generally going to be frightened of it as opposed to someone
Yeah.
that's just kind of curious and is going to take delight in such a creature, which leads me to my next question. We the husband and I recently traveled to North Georgia, and we got to experience Expedition Bigfoot.
Oh,
I,
nice.
and it was very interesting. It went through all these different depictions of Bigfoot, and there were many casts of footprints and hair
Mm.
follicles and all kinds of fun things. And that lore is everywhere, as you know. It's not just situated in one particular area. So, based on all the evidence out there, all the stories and everything, I have to ask: do you believe that Bigfoot, or any of the other cryptids for that matter, are real? Do you believe that they exist?
Um, well, I mean, it's a big umbrella term, isn't it? Cryptids. It
Yes.
covers so many, so many. I mean, I myself, I've sort of catalogued in my sketchbooks more than 400 different creatures.
Wow.
So, you know, most people will have heard of Bigfoot and the Loch Ness monster and Mothman, even, you know, things like that.
Yes.
But it goes into the thousands. There's so many different reports of different animals that we don't know what they are. And if you look at natural history, new animals are being discovered every year,
Hmm.
by the hundred. You know, whether it's a new type of insect or a new species of dolphin in the ocean, it's happening every year.
Yes.
So I wouldn't even put the word belief on it because it sort of has a religious connotation. Um, I'd be more inclined to sort of describe it as I accept that there is enough evidence that convinces me these things are living, breathing animals. Um, in particular, Bigfoot. Um, every state bar Hawaii
Hmm.
have stories going back thousands of years, pre-white
Yes.
man invasion. Um, you know, the First Nation people, Native Americans, have all these stories. I mean, they also have stories of you know, talking animals and things like that. But a friend of mine recently pointed that out. You know, a lot of people leave that aspect out of the spiritual aspects of native culture, American Native American culture, but they also include Bigfoot as another tribe, as another type of people that they traded with. And when you have every single tribe across every state in America with more than 400 names for Bigfoot. Um, there's something going on. You know, this can't all be one old wives' tale or a metaphor or some kind of,
Right.
you know, fancy story to keep kids out of the woods. Because there are dangerous animals in the woods anyway, like wolves and bears and mountain lions. So you don't have to invent one to keep people out of the woods. You know, there was that thing in Europe where, particularly in Christmas, when it was, you know, obviously icy and cold, they didn't want children wandering off into the woods, so they would invent these monsters. And in Native America, you sort of have this idea that there's a Bigfoot in the woods, and if you come across him, don't look him in the eye, which is interesting because that's the same sort of thing you're supposed to do with Bigfoot, with gorillas, is the same as Bigfoot, where you don't look them in the eye, although they'll attack you or carry you away. Is a sort of the old adage there, but I absolutely accept that they're there. There's got to be something going on. There's too much anecdotal evidence, and you know, people would say that's not evidence, but there's more evidence than has been presented for some people to have been put on death row. You know, so why it's still not accepted as a living creature is really interesting.
Considering the fact that and to your point, is there are literally hundreds and thousands and millions of stories of these types of creatures existing through every race, breed of man, you know, or not. It's, you can't call it a coincidence in my mind. Like, it's really not. There's definitely, I agree, there's definitely something to it. I accept that they're there. Will I ever see one in my lifetime? Probably not, because I'm really not in the woods that much, but that doesn't mean that they're not there.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing. It's the same with UFOs. People sort of
Yes.
turn their nose up at it because a lot of people don't look up enough. You know, everyone's looking down at their phone. And of course, if they actually took a moment and went out into the desert and looked at the sky for a couple of weeks, they'd be mind blown at what they see flying around up there. And
Absolutely.
it may not necessarily be an alien from another planet. You know, it might be a test aircraft. But the fact of the matter is, people are seeing things, and it's happening, and it's not some TV, you know, imagination thing. You know, of course, misidentification does happen. Yeah, people get things wrong, and people do see things that are clearly something else. You know, in case of Bigfoot, yeah, they did see a bear and things like that.
Right.
But there are some instances where there's just no question. There's just absolutely no question. It's going on.
Now, with doing all the artwork for a lot of these books for the cryptids, has that kind of also helped affirm your acceptance that they do exist?
You know, it's been a sort of a childhood interest onwards, the unexplained in general, and to sort of finally be in a position where I'm creating the artwork for these book covers it's a dream come true. It's a little boy's dream, you know. I used to be fascinated with Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster and all kinds of unexplained creatures and animals from around the world. And I always used to look at the artwork and think, you know, well, that's good, but it doesn't look very realistic, you know. And I always wanted to sort of put a realistic stamp on it to sort of not convince people, but to show them what could be physically possible, and keep things very grounded in nature as much as possible. So doing all the artwork for these things has sort of not necessarily convinced me more, but it's given me an opportunity to read more about accounts and stories that I hadn't heard before, which is great. Really, really good stuff. So yes, like a little boy's dream.
Now, are there any types of these creatures that you haven't had a chance to draw yet that you want to bring to light?
Oh, there's so many. I don't know where to begin.
That's kind of a loaded question, then I apologize.
Oh God, it is. Yeah, no, I can't even answer that. There's too many. I mean, I've done maybe 20 or 30 different animals already that have been published, and I've done stacks of other stuff of my own. But yeah, I couldn't begin to sort of list anything that I haven't done that I really want to.
Okay.
Also, I wouldn't even want to sort of say, because then people would be waiting for it,
Then you already
I've got
set the
enough to do.
expectation that you're going to start doing more of
Yeah,
these.
yeah,
So,
I've got enough to do. Yeah,
how about maybe one day you might see something? There you go.
yeah, you go. Yeah. No, you will. Yeah,
I love that you've had this, these thoughts in your head since you were younger, and that you're able to now actually put them to paper. And as you said, it's the little boy's dream, and I think that that's fantastic. And I love hearing things like that. It makes me so happy for you that you're able to do these things and be involved in some of these projects.
yeah. It's possible. Dreams do come true. But you can't just make a wish. You have to work for it. Um, my mum always used to say, no one's going to knock on your front door and ask for you. You have to go out there and tell them that you exist. You have to get out there and do it. You can't just expect things to land in your lap, because they don't.
Yeah.
They just don't. You have to do whatever craft it is you do, whether you're a writer, a singer, an artist, actor, musician. You've got to put it out there, and you have to sort of show, not spam people, but you have to sort of create your own platform where you are and show that the best of your best, and then people will knock on your door, and then people will be like, wow, can I get some of that? It's unfortunate that, as we were saying earlier, there's so many people who sort of, they try it on and they think, well, that's cool, I can do that too, and they just sort of push it on everybody, and then people kind of get sick of that, and it's a shame. And it's the same with horror. There's a lot of crap out there, and so people sort of poo-poo horror, and they think, oh, horror's rubbish, when it isn't. It's terrifyingly brilliant, and it's romantic, and it's been around since film began. It's the first films were horror films.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, further to the point, it's really important to sort of get the work out there only on your best merit. You can't expect people to just accept everything that you produce as brilliant,
Right.
unless it is.
And then you're
And that's
quite
not for you
lucky
to
if that's the case.
Yeah, but then again, you can't blow your own trumpet and sort of be the I'm the big all I am kind of thing. You can't sort of be pretentious and say that you're better than anyone. You can't praise yourself. That's the worst thing you can do, because you're lying to yourself. It's not anyone's job to do that to themselves. So long as you enjoy it for yourself and you're happy and you're doing what you want to do, there's nothing wrong with it. But don't push it on people and expect them to agree. That's rule number one, is don't be a dick.
I think that would go for a lot of things in life. Is just that's a good philosophy, and I preach that. I'm just like, don't be a dick. Have your opinion, and be certain things. Just be nice. Goes a long way for sure. Now, there were a couple of other pieces that I wanted to talk to you about, and this one in particular, there were actually I think 3 more that I wanted to chat with you about. This one in particular, the Edgar Allan Poe piece, is number one. It's absolutely beautiful, and I wanted to ask you, do you have a favorite Poe tale?
I'd say The Black Cat, which probably everyone will have heard of, because it's more of a ghost story than anything else, and I love my ghost stories, but I love cats as well. And when you have a relationship with a cat that is, people say cats aren't loyal, but they very much are. And when you have a story, I'm not going to ruin it, but when you have a story where something's haunting you and reminding you of something awful that you've done, and the whole thing is in the back of your mind, is this even real, or is it my own guilty conscience, and all this kind of thing. I think it's a wonderful story. But yeah, that Poe image, I had to include the cat and the raven, because just they are the most commercially known images from that. I wanted to include Red Death and the Gold Bug and all of that kind of thing, but then it would be too much. Maybe I'll do a second one. Who knows?
I was going to ask you, have you thought about doing a second one to include some of those other pieces?
Well, I have considered doing Edgar Allan Poe with H.P. Lovecraft together, having an arm wrestle. I thought that would be quite fun. And then all of the characters behind them sort of egging them on. um, on either side. That'd be kind of fun. But it's time. Who has time for comedy? Nobody.
Apparently not these days.
Yeah. And that's the other thing with the internet. Again, going back to that, is you can spend so much time on a piece of work. Again, whether it's music or writing or artwork, hours and hours and hours, days, weeks, sometimes months on one piece. For someone to sort of look at it on their phone and go, "Oh, that's good," and then they swipe past on their thumb within less than a second, and it's gone.
Yeah. It's that short attention span.
Yeah, it's just heart wrenching. Yeah, yeah. So
Well, he's a beauty, and I appreciate it. And I hope that you do another piece with him. I look
thank
forward
you.
to that.
One day.
The the other image that I've got here is it's your biomechanical rabbit, and I absolutely love the insane amount of detail within the gears underneath the rib cage for that. So I have to ask you, what was the inspiration for creating him?
It was just stuck in my head, this idea that I'd had since I was maybe 18, of a rabbit that didn't have legs, but instead it had springs. How would you fix a rabbit and still give it a lease of life? You put springs on it. And it was a lot of my work comes from comedy, and most people don't see that straight away, but there's always that little cheeky aspect or concept hidden in there. So if anyone's familiar with my work, maybe go back and look at it again and see if you can find some of the jokes in there.
Okay.
But really, that idea, I'd sketched it out in the past, and it was a full rabbit with just springs. And then I thought, well, I should really digitally create this as a full piece, as though it were real. And then it just sort of was born from that. And as I was saying earlier, things don't always turn out in your head as you originally imagined them.
Right.
And it looks nothing like the original sketch now. It has become far more detailed, and only its head is really now originally rabbit. So it just kind of evolved from there. It was just all based on a silly little idea.
I think that's how a lot of things start out, is you get that one little thought or one little idea in your head, and then it just goes to places that I know some folks, don't even think that it's going to go, and then it goes there and it comes out to be this beautiful piece.
It's like the Mona Lisa, isn't it? That was just a silly little idea. It was he thought, oh, what would I look like if I was dressed like a woman? And he did a self-portrait. That's what I've heard recently, anyway.
And now it's the most well-known piece of artwork all over the world.
Yeah. I don't know. Who knows what the original story is, whether it was his lover, who was actually a boy that he painted as a woman, or if it was himself, or if it was actually a woman. Who knows? But yeah, it's crazy how people will take one piece of artwork, spin it, and all these years later, someone has a completely different view on it. I love that.
It's great to see that it still provokes that kind of thought in people so many years later.
Yeah.
Now you've also done, so along with the amazing books, you've also done some work here that I wanted to kind of show. So you've worked with quite a few bands and done some artwork for them. You've worked with bands like Slayer, Kiss, Iron Maiden, Rammstein, and then this piece here you worked with Rob Zombie. So I've got to ask, is that one of those things where, did you chase them down? Did they come to you? How did that come about?
That came about. I was in touch with Rob back in the MySpace days, and we had corresponded back and forth because I'd done a portrait of John Larry at the time, who I think he had just joined Zombie. I think it was must have been around 2007, 2008. He'd left the Marilyn Manson band and had joined Rob Zombie as the guitarist. And so I'd done a portrait of John, and I loved I do love his solo albums. Phenomenal guitarist. And Rob had seen that on MySpace and said, oh, great work. And we just got talking, and I said I'd love to do some work for the new album, which at the time was Hellbilly Deluxe, was in the works. So this would have been 2009, I think. And so, I put this headpiece together. which ended up being included in the album sleeve itself. And it went out as a T-shirt and a couple of things like that. So yeah, it was interesting.
Now, now from back when you were younger, if you had told yourself before you came over here to the States, that
Mm.
you were going to be doing things like these, these big projects or having as much success as you've had with your art, would you have believed yourself?
Um, in all honesty, and without sounding like some pretentious lord or whatever, yeah, I would, because it's what I've always wanted. And I think if you stick to your guns and you again, as I said before, if you work hard and you really knuckle down and focus on your goals, um, you can pretty much do what you want in life, and it's never going to come out as you expect it to be. It's always going to be better. Things will always get better, even if you're at your lowest point and you think, that you want to give up because you can't see it going anywhere.
Yeah.
um, no one should ever give up, and even if they are, told that their work isn't good, or they're just not getting the attention, and they just want to have a break, someone give me a break kind of feeling.
Yeah.
um, you should always just keep trying, because you really only, at the end of the day, you have to remind yourself that you're only doing it for yourself, that you're not trying to please anybody else. And so to sort of say, if I could go back and talk to my 18-year-old self who had a poster of Rob Zombie on my bedroom wall, and say, in, what was it, 10, 12 years or something from that point, you would have your artwork in one of his albums, I would have believed it, because it's what I wanted. I'd say, yeah, okay, when? How do we do this? Let's get it done. And Rob's a great guy. There are, of course, clients out there that, like anybody is, there are nice people, there are horrible people.
Yes.
And sometimes jobs don't work because some people are having a hard life themselves and they can't, help you out. And so, unfortunately, projects don't always come through, and sometimes you have to sort of close the book on those and move on. And that's fine too, because it fuels you to sort of go, okay, right, next job then. That's fine. Should never give up on it. And with Rob, he's a great guy and super nice, super polite, brilliant businessman. He knows what he wants and he gets things done. And a lovely man, a really lovely man, yeah. And a great artist himself. He's a prime example of, he wants to do this. He doesn't care if anyone likes it or not. He just wants to do it for himself, and he gets it out there, and it's his art. And some people don't like his movies, or some people don't like his artwork and his music. I do, and a lot of other people do. So, everyone should always talk about what they love. They should never complain or poo-poo someone else.
Oh, completely.
There's enough of that going around.
There's too much of that going around. That right there is my favorite thing that I think that we've talked about is, talk about the things that you love and enjoy the things that you enjoy, and stop with the poo-pooing and the negativity and all that. Now I know, you've done amazing things, and I know you've got some things coming up quickly that you're working on. I know you do your live shows on your Instagram.
That's right. Yeah, I do. So I have a Patreon where every Wednesday I will go live for an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours, and I'll draw and I'll talk to people and answer questions and that kind of thing. And it's a nice sort of little group of people that I've got there. That every Wednesday at 6 o'clock we can all kind of just unwind while I draw something straight off the cuff onto a blank piece of paper, and then when it's pretty much done, I'll then go over to Instagram and show everyone what we had been working on. But if anyone wants to see it from scratch and sort of hang out, then that's on Patreon, on a little segment level that I call Seance with Sam.
And I'll make sure that I'll link that down below for everybody that's watching the replay. And I do have the links in the description box as well for the Patreon, which I've seen it after the fact. And just to kind of remind folks who are on Eastern time, you're on California time, so you're about 3 hours behind us. So that would be roughly 9 o'clock our time.
Wow, it must be late there.
It's almost 9 our time. We're a little bit ahead of you guys. We know the future apparently.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind if you guys do become, I don't know what to call Patreon subscribers,
Patrons.
Patreons.
I don't know.
If you get on the Patreon wagon, as I'll call it there, keep in mind the time difference. And then you're also working on a podcast too. So not that you don't have enough going on, but you're also adding to the plate, and you're going to be doing a podcast here on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm my own worst enemy, really, aren't I? It just, I have so much on the plate, and then when I have sort of like a day clear, I'll have another idea of like, I can just fill that hour with this, and it's a wonder I get any sleep. I am working on a podcast that is, it's not just on YouTube. It should be on all podcast platforms, so iTunes, Google, Stitcher, anywhere you get your podcatcher things. But the visuals will be on YouTube. So if you want to have a little background imagery and amusing things on there, YouTube is probably the best place to subscribe to begin with. And there'll be extra smaller, shorter sort of videos on there as well. But it's really centered around the unexplained as an umbrella term, which has so many other facets of cryptozoology, ghosts, and UFOs. So the first season will just be primarily focusing on ghosts.
Okay.
And really kind of covering every aspect of that to get it done. Whereas you have some podcasts will do a different subject every episode, and that's fine, and I love those shows. Some great shows out there that do that. You never know what the next episode's going to be, and that's quite exciting. With mine, some people might find it a little bit boring, where they know that the next episode is going to be about ghosts, and then the next episode's also going to be about ghosts. But the thing is it will be hopefully a resource where people can go to for information, more of a documentary style place of resource for everything to do with hauntings. And then from that point on, maybe in a year or two, we'll change the subject.
Okay. Are you also going to talk about, how do I want to word this? Are you looking for people to relay their experiences to you so that you can include it in there? Or are you going off of factual things, or have you experienced anything that maybe kind of brought this
Very
on?
much so. I mean, yeah, if people want to reach out and send me their stories, I retell them. It's not a guest talk show situation.
Right.
It's more of me retelling the stories with, music and that kind of thing. And so if someone wants to have their name changed, that's entirely fine as well. But yeah, I'll be accepting all kinds of stories, and you can just reach out to me via social media for that, and I'll give you, an email where you can send the story, or if you want to just have a phone call, that's fine too.
Perfect. Now, have you had any supernatural experiences yourself?
Too many. Too many. Yeah. I said the other day I was on another podcast. I'm laughing because I don't know where to begin. And I'll always say that because there's so many ways to sort of tackle that question without someone saying, "Oh, here we go. Oh, he's crazy. Oh, I knew it. He was a bit weird."
Not at all.
It does happen again. It goes back to that old sort of. You just can't get around it. There are things going on that we just simply cannot explain, and the unexplained is something it's touched everybody that I know. Everybody knows somebody who's seen something.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, ghosts. Where do you begin? Shadow people is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
You hear voices, that kind of thing, and people say, yeah, it's just in your head, or it's your imagination, or you were tired, or or you heard something that was actually from next door, or and you never know. Maybe it is, maybe it is, but there's some instances where you're just so freaked out and there's absolutely no explanation for it whatsoever, where you just got to sort of accept it and hope that it doesn't sort of escalate into an awful situation where you have to move home.
It doesn't turn into the movies where all of a sudden things are getting worse and the dog is flying across the room.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's awful when that happens anyway, but
Yes. Now I've got a couple of questions coming in from the chat room. Just take these real quickly. asking what your thoughts are on the afterlife. Do you believe that there is an afterlife, or do you think that maybe it's more of a residual thing, or do you think that maybe it's, you know, the actual remnants of people?
I like these ideas you're listing here. I think no, it's a great question. It's a really good question, and I think the answer is without trying to seemingly, try and avoid it or anything like that. I think the answer is everything. I think it's all those answers. I don't think there's any one real answer. I think there's too much that we don't know for us to really sort of pinpoint and say, well, it's definitely this. Interestingly enough, I saw an interview with Rob Zombie a number of years ago, and he had said, I think he had a similar question asked to him, and he had said that he just believes that there's nothing, that we're worm food. And I found that really interesting, considering what he sings about.
Yes.
Yeah, and the whole paranormal and the supernatural and zombies and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
He thinks, nah, there's nothing. We're just worms. That's it. We're just dirt. I disagree. I actually I think there is an afterlife, whether it's another plane of existence, another dimension, whether we even have the words for it. I don't know.
Right.
I think there's something going on, and we're not going to know until we die, obviously.
Right? Then you'll know, and you can't really, it's not like you can write a book about it after the fact.
Yeah. No, I mean, is it, every religion around the world has a different name for it. Mm-hmm. And I find that interesting, that it's the question that's been around, as long as, are we alone in the universe? And what's behind, the curtain of death? We don't really know. People have had near-death experiences. They've come back, and people all describe the same thing.
Yeah.
And some medical experts have explained certain things in certain ways to say, you see a white light because this is happening in your brain, and it's the synapses firing off, and blah blah, and consciousness, yada yada.
Right.
And there are some situations where someone's having an operation and they are aware that they are out of their body and they're floating above themselves, and they're seeing the doctors working on themselves, and then they're sucked back into their body and they wake up, and then the next day they're coming around or whatever, and they say to the doctor, oh, thanks to the woman with the red hair who did this or whatever. And the doctors are just baffled because there's no way they could have known,
right,
what they were seeing, that kind of thing. And there's too many stories of that situation where it's been proven by other people, not the person telling the story,
right,
but by the other people hearing the story saying, how could they have known? There's no way they could have known. So when you die, where do we go? Where is the consciousness? It's all very weird, isn't it? But yeah, I'm going to tackle all of that on the podcast. I'm going to get really in depth into death.
Now, when are you looking to start that? I know you haven't started that just yet.
That's a good question as well.
Coming soon.
Coming soon. Finger bangs. That's it was originally going to be out in April, but a number of things landed on my table that I couldn't pass up, and I had to sort of put that on hold. So hopefully this month at some point.
Okay.
And again, it'll be on all platforms, but just keep your eye on social media.
Definitely. And then make sure, if you're not, subscribe to the YouTube channel so you get those notifications when those videos do go live, so that you can watch them and be a part of that. I'm very excited to see where you go with it and in the stories and everything else. I'm very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you. So am
I. Now, I like to ask this last question. I do have one more, and I ask this of all of my guests, and it always tells me a little bit about them as a person. So I do have to ask, what is your favorite horror film?
Wow.
And you can go top 3 if need be, because that question, everybody gives me that look.
Yeah. Again, that's such an umbrella term, isn't it? Because there's so many different versions of horror. Yes. And I suppose it depends what you want to get out of a horror film. If you want a sort of monster gore thriller, then my favorite would be The Thing, John Carpenter's version of The Thing. is up there as number one. I mean, it has everything. It has everything: suspense, adventure, shock, gore. There's even maybe a little bit of romance in there. It's a phenomenal piece of art, craftsmanship, everything. The physical effects in there is just, to this day, spellbinding. It's got to be number one. Is the thing. But then, if you wanna have something else out of horror, like a really suspenseful, supernatural, witchcrafty, folkloric vibe, then I would go with The Ritual, which came out a couple of years back.
Yes.
Not fairly recent film, which is based on a bunch of hikers out in Sweden, and this has a sort of a Lovecraftian, ancient god of the forest kind of vibe. Very disturbing. So if you like The Witch or Midsummer and you haven't seen The Ritual, then watch that.
It's very
yeah,
good.
I think The Thing has to be number one.
Okay, listen, I love John Carpenter and just about everything he does.
Oh yeah, he's great.
I mean, it doesn't matter what it is, but The Thing is definitely phenomenal. So those are some very good choices, and The Ritual is definitely one that doesn't. I don't think it gets enough love, and I don't think it gets brought up enough.
Yeah, it's brilliant in every way, and the effects in that when you have the final reveal at the end is
good.
It's just beautiful. It's just absolutely beautiful.
So if you have not yet, check out The Ritual. And if you've been hiding under a rock and have not seen The Thing yet, crawl out from under that rock and give it a watch, because it is a fantastic film. Now, I just wanted to share with you guys real quickly, for those who may be looking to follow Mr. Sam here, I've got some links for you. So we have up your main website, and you do sell your prints online. We've got your YouTube channel, your Instagram, and of course, we have your print store as well.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's great. Appreciate it.
Oh, of course. So make sure you're following Mr. Sam Sharon on all the social medias. If you're not yet doing so, you might want to get on that, because you've got some great stuff coming up, and I can't wait to see where it all goes. So thank you so much for sharing your Monday evening with us. I appreciate you coming on and chatting with me and letting us get to know you a little bit and share your mind.
Well, thanks for the invite. It's been great. And yeah, I wish you the best of luck in the future. And hopefully, when things open up and we have these horror conventions, maybe I'll run into you. And we can all sort of reminisce on the isolation days.
Right? Back when the plague was happening. That'll be the reminiscing. Well, thank you again so much. Thank you, everybody that's tuned in to watch. If you have not yet done so, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, boys and girls, make sure that you keep it spooky. Bye.